Right. We gonna see now, like, what were the assumptions that actually influenced, that were underpinned by early approaches to syllabus design. So the rationale behind this is just to see how language teaching and learning and the nature of language learning was seen then, and what so let's have a look, like what were the assumptions. Okay, so just for your reference sake, for your like, these assumptions were just in vogue, for example, in the first few decades of the 20th century, when efforts were made to develop a systematic set of guidelines for language curriculum design. Right. Let's have, here we go. The first one, the first assumption was that the basic units of language are vocabulary and grammar. And I think you could recall well, you might recall well, that we have dealt with this issue in depth in previously. Right. Teaching this assumption, revolved around, like, teaching English can be better taught through English. It just overlooked the significance of functionality of language learning, like how English is seen outside the classroom. And for this sake, efforts were made to design a careful syllabus, right, which and that was thought to offer a sound basis for second language learning. And what about the second assumption? There was, for example, learners everywhere have the same needs. You might be surprised, like, second language learners were treated as a homogeneous group. They were treated as one unit of learners. Their diversity was not considered then. For example, if one learner needs language learning items, the other learner has the same needs. So that was the assumption that we have come to know through the analysis of early approaches to syllabus design. Right. And what about the third one? The third is learners' needs are identified exclusively in terms of language needs. Right. Language teaching was considered just as a. It simply wasn't thought to be like playing a role of preparing students who could perform some roles in the outer world, in the social life. And another assumption was the process of learning a language is largely determined by the textbook, because textbook was the basic thing then. Teachers had only textbooks to rely on in the earlier parts of the 20th century. So that's the assumption we have come to know through the analysis of different approaches to syllabus design, right? And learning can be better controlled through practice, presentation, production, and then practice. So, and the context of teaching is English as a foreign language. English was not then considered to be a second language. Rather, it was considered to be as a foreign language. And it was taught as a formal subject instead of, sort of a specific subject. And as we have already seen, like textbook was the primary unit. That was the fundamental thing. And the task of syllabus designer was to simplify, lexical, grammatical input for the learners. Right. So what was the influence then? The influence was the status of language learning was sort of challenged, and the approaches were changed then, and people were looking for something new, something which is desirable by learners. And obviously these changes left a remarkable influence on principles to language curriculum design.